Bloomberg Audio Studios. Podcasts, radio, news.
This is the closing bell on the Stock Movers Report. The companies making moves at the close of U.S. trading with Carol Massar, Tim Stenovec, Romaine Bostick, and Scarlet Fu.
The S&P 500 I go, and you've got, as I pull it up on my terminal, 366 names to the downside, 137 to the upside, Scarlett. So definitely more of a risk-off trade today.
Yeah, and when you look at the IMAP with its 11 sectors, only 3 of them finishing in the green. Tech up by more than 1%. Communication services gaining 0.5%. Healthcare marginally higher, but everything else is down. And the big laggard here on the day was real estate investment trust, losing 2.5%.
All right, let's get to some of the individual gainers, if I may. And got to talk about BP today, folks. At its highs, up more than 10% in today's session, finishing with just a gain of about 1.6%. The ADRs that trade here, the big energy giant, oil giant, they rallied on a Wall Street Journal report that Royal Dutch Shell is in early talks to buy BP, which is considering the approach carefully. We did then have Shell come out and say, nope, we're not looking to do this. But there's been lots of speculation, and activists has been pushing for some changes at BP. So this is something we're going to watch. Keep in mind that Bloomberg also had reported, I think back in May, that Shell had been studying the merits of a deal. So we're going to keep this one on our radar, but not as enthusiastic, but still with a gain of about 1.6%. Chips, we mentioned it. Micron going to report after the closing bell. AMD, an outperformer today, up about 3.5%. We saw that moving. Your second biggest gainer in the NASDAQ 100. CFRA yesterday upgraded the chip maker to strong buy from buy, up the price target to 165 from 125, stock closing at 143 and change. Angelo Zeno saying in a note that AMD is closing the competitive gap with Nvidia, and we've got Micron crossing the blue
Micron
wire.
Earnings crossing the wire. 3Q adjusted operating income $2.49 billion. That is a beat. The street was looking for $2.13 billion. Cash flow from operations coming in slightly below street estimates of $4.61 billion. Adjusted EPS does beat the bottom line number for the quarter, $1.91. The street was looking for $1.60 on average, and the top line number, revenue for the fiscal third quarter, $9.3 billion. The street was looking for $8.85 billion, and gross margin also coming in above estimates at 39%. The street was looking for roughly about 37%. Now, for the current quarter, the fiscal fourth quarter, the company is guiding for a revenue range of $10.4 to $11 billion. The low end of that range is significantly above the average of street estimates. The street, Scarlett, was looking for $9.89 billion. Yeah,
so that is a beat, and you're looking at the stock gaining more than 6% in after-hours trading. Fiscal fourth quarter revenue, you mentioned that it's a range of $10.4 to $11 billion, higher than the consensus estimate of $9.9 billion, projected to grow 15% sequentially. So once again, it underscores the demand there for these high bandwidth memory chips that Micron makes. And as Pierre Ferragu was telling us earlier, Carol, this idea that it has to meet demand for that means that it makes fewer of the DRAM and the NAND chips, and so it has a better supply-demand equation for those legacy chips as well.
Well, listen, they're a key beneficiary of AI computing gear spending, right? Their growth, those high bandwidth memory chips, they're in high demand, right? As you said, they've been driven up the prices due to supply constraints, but you are seeing that they're playing into that AI trade. What I want to point out, though, you've got the stock up almost 7% in the aftermarket. Shares have roughly doubled since the S&P bottom back in April. So this was a real test. They had to outperform here, and that share price move shows that they
just real quickly, too. There are more numbers coming out here on the forecast, specifically an increase, a widening of gross margin projected to be about 41% for the current quarter. That's plus or minus 1 percentage point. That's well above street estimates. And then diluted earnings per share, Tim, $2.29 a share is the guidance, plus or minus about 15 cents, also coming in above street estimates.
Okay, so we'll wait till the earnings call to get more commentary, but Sanjay Mehrotra is saying that we're on track to deliver record revenue with solid profitability and free cash flow in fiscal 2025, while we make disciplined investments to build our technology leadership. And get this part, guys, manufacturing excellence to satisfy growing AI-driven memory demand. So they're still saying, there's been a lot of demand. There were questions about demand moving forward, and we're going to work to deliver on that demand.
All right, so interesting. Some optimism. I was trying to take a look. It looks like AMD is even maybe moving in the aftermarket, so we'll keep a watch on that chip space. I'm going to go back. I mentioned AMD already. I want to go to Nvidia because, as Scarlett mentioned earlier, an outperformer today, up more than 4%, pretty much finishing at its highs of the session, and I believe that was a record close for the company. Yes, yep. Indeed. Nvidia's price target lifted to a street high of $250 from $175 over at Loop Capital Markets, who says that the chip maker is positioned favorably into the next golden wave of generative AI adoption and can reach a $6 trillion market cap for the company. Right now, the market cap at $3.7 trillion, so some outperformance. And I'm just going to throw in Alphabet, if I can, up about 2.3%. This was a top gainer, too, in the S&P and NASDAQ 100. Alphabet's Google launching Gemini CL1, I believe it is, or CLI, an AI coding assistant to ease the work of developers and catch up with some rival products. So, again, some outperformance there, Tim. What do you got for decliners?
I want to start with FedEx, down 3.3% today. It fell close to 6% earlier in the session, bounced off those lows. The company warning that its profit will be worse than expected for this quarter. It declined to offer guidance for the rest of the year due to the uncertain global demand environment. Also, General Mills falling more than 5% today. It's the worst single day going back 2 years to June of 2023. The company projected a lower adjusted profit for the fiscal year ahead. Cautious consumers is what they say they are finding. Those cautious consumers are limiting their grocery expenses. And here's an interesting one, a New York City-focused decliner, Flagstar Financial. Remember, this is the company formerly known as New York Community Bank. Shares fell 3.9% today. This is due to its exposure to the rent-regulated market as a result of Zoran Mamdani's upset last night. As he's set to become the Democratic nominee for mayor of New York, he's called for a bold progressive agenda, including rent freezes. And that bank is heavily exposed to the rent-regulated market. Shares fell 4% today.
Just a quick check on yields. Not a whole lot of action there, but 3 straight days now that we've seen yields fall on the shorter end of the curve, down about 5 basis points on the 2-year. The long end of the curve, you can see much different, and that's contributing, of course, a lot to the steepening that we've seen as of late, guys.
Yeah, and listen, we're just taking a look again as Micron continues to move higher. We've seen some other ones. SanDisk, Western Digital following Micron higher in the aftermarket. SanDisk up about 2.9%, 3.5%. So we are seeing their news lift a couple of other names in the sector.
Nvidia as well. So building on that record high, now up by 0.4%. Of course, we'll wait to get more details from the earnings call, but clearly margin expansion is what investors were fixated on. Yeah, and just real quickly before we go, another headline crossing the wire. This on a software stock, Asana new CEO at that company, Dan Rogers. Yeah. So, okay, a little bit of earnings. I feel like, we're just getting the last, little last bit gasp right before we start in JP Morgan.
Yeah, July 15th.
A couple of weeks.
July 15th. Mark your calendars.
All right. It's going to be a long 3 weeks until then. Nothing's going to go on. It's been so quiet.
The Stock Movers Report from Bloomberg Radio. Check back with us throughout the day for the latest roundup of companies making news on Wall Street. And for the latest market-moving headlines, listen to Bloomberg Radio live. Catch us on YouTube, Bloomberg.com, and on Apple CarPlay and Android Auto with the Bloomberg Business app.